All right, everyone, before we get started today, I need to tell you about our amazing teammates at Darby Communications. If you run an outdoor, an endurance, or an active lifestyle brand, there is no better PR or digital marketing belay partner or drinking buddy than Darby. They can help your business reach new heights, and they might just keep you from falling on your ass. Since we started working with Darby, more and more people have been reaching out to us here at the Rock Fight because of that messaging. Look, guys, if they can help us, they can help anybody. Hit them up at darbycommunications.com. Do it today. Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin, and today we're talking with someone who is making the outdoor secondhand marketplace possible. But before we get to that, it's been an action-packed week here on the Rock Fight. Monday, we ranked the top 5 outdoor gear brands going in 2025, and on Wednesday, Justin Hausman and I talked about conservation versus recreation before diving into the latest layoffs to hit outside. And hey, if you subscribe to News from the Front, Rockfight's official newsletter, head over to rockfight.co and click join the mailing list to sign up. If you're new around here, please subscribe and join the Rock Fight podcast, the one you're listening to right now, by lobbing a little old stone at the follow button on whatever podcast app you are listening to us on. Also, give us that 5-star rating. And lastly, have you checked out Doug Schnitzbon's Open Container, the latest podcast on the Rock Fight Podcast Network? You can find Open Container wherever you're listening to the Rock Fight. So find Open Container, follow Open Container, give it 5 stars as well. And all right, let's start the show. Last fall, news was coming out fast and furious from brands who were launching their own re-commerce platforms. And re-commerce is secondhand goods sold by brands who made the stuff originally and are selling it exclusively through their own secondhand online store. I was pretty critical of many of these brands because it felt kind of box-checky, a little greenwashy. But after having folks like Baruch Ben-Zekri from Out and Back on the show, as well as Aaron Provine from Gear Trade, he came on as well, both of whom are prominent online secondhand retailers, I learned a couple of things. And number one, the secondhand revolution isn't coming. It's already here. And number two, there are still a lot of folks out there trying a lot of different things to create a more circular world when it comes to the outdoor stuff that we like to buy. Now, one other person reached out to me, and that was Peter Whitcomb of Tersus Solutions. Now, Tersus has a really interesting backstory. They operate kind of behind the scenes. They use a new technology to clean outdoor gear and apparel, but they also help brands manage their own re-commerce. And when the book is written on how we finally solved our stuff problem, it's going to be folks like Peter and companies like Tersus Solutions who are the reason we finally figured our shit out. And Peter is here today to talk about not just Tersus Solutions, but also to weigh in on how we do finally get to that more circular world. So welcome back to the Rock Fight, where today it's a peek behind the sustainability curtain with Peter Whitcomb of Tersus Solutions. All right, well, we're here today with Peter Whitcomb from Tersus Solutions, kind of one of the, I hope I'm describing this correctly, I'm going to call it one of the kind of behind-the-scenes players working to create a more circular world when it comes to apparel. Welcome to the show, Peter. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Colin. Excited to be here. And yeah, I think that's a fair description. We actually call ourselves the backbone of re-commerce. So behind the scenes is fitting as well.
I actually doing a little digging in preparation for this, and I did find you guys do have a YouTube channel, and there were 3 YouTube videos on it. They're all about 10 years old at this point. But it was a pretty public unveiling when you guys launched, about 10 years ago, I guess.
Yeah. You clearly went deep. I actually didn't even know those videos were still up on YouTube. I know there are a few floating out there that sort of unpack the technology, and I'm sure we'll get into the history and what we do. But you're the first person to reference those YouTube videos since I've been in this role in 3.5 years.
Well, we're well researched here on the Rock Fight,
Love
I guess.
It. Yeah. Love it. Yeah.
It was old enough that because you did some of the partnership stemmed from some work, I guess, with Patagonia, and they were still referencing their old tagline of "Build the best product, cause on no unnecessary harm." I'm like, that was such a better tagline. I really liked that one.
Good one. They who knows? Maybe they get back to that.
Anyway, you reached out to me actually last fall when we started covering the flurry of branded re-commerce sites that were announced here on the Rock Fight, and then that conversation led to Aaron from Gear Trade coming back on the show and Baruch from Out and Back joining the show, and both of them are 2 prominent online secondhand retailers who you reference you have worked with in some capacity or are continuing to work with today. I guess just broadly speaking, like I said, you guys are a little behind the scenes. You're the backbone. So what is the role of a company like Tersus? Also, what do you guys do? What does Tersus do? Let's just start there.
Yeah. So, and I'll unpack kind of the full history, but in some, we're operators and we handle used product and clean and repair it to make it resellable, ideally. And so our fundamental purpose is to get more use out of stuff that already exists. And we operate out of 3 warehouses in and around Denver, Colorado. And we've developed a waterless cleaning technology that uses liquid CO2 to clean textiles. And it's really the most effective way and most environmentally friendly way to clean, period. And the genesis of the business, just to touch on it, so our founder, Steve Madsen, was running a dry cleaner here in the Front Range of Colorado called Revolution Cleaners. And he was a very early adopter of the CO2 cleaning technology that actually had spawned out of military application. So they were using it to clean hard to clean stuff like bomb parts, body armor, funky stuff that's just, you can't throw in a washing machine. So Steve actually purchased an early CO2 machine thinking, hey, this is like the new way to kill dry cleaning, basically. I think that was sort of his aim, was like, let's kill dry cleaning. It's environmentally damaging. A lot of dry cleaners end up as Superfund sites because they use perc and other harmful chemicals in the cleaning process. And the machine actually didn't work well. So he rebuilt it. And through that process, patented the technology, ended up selling the dry cleaner, kept the technology, and fast forward to today, we use that to deploy across 3 different industries. One is, enabling brands such as the North Face, Arc'teryx, Cotopaxi to, power their resale businesses. The second is we have a down recycling business. We were just talking about that. I'm wearing a Crescent Down Works vest. They buy post-consumer CO2 clean down that we've extracted from other brands' products. And then lastly, we have a firefighter gear and PPE decontamination business. And, I've really unlocked sort of how firefighters care for their gear in that business with our technology.
Why isn't the technology supplanted dry cleaning like en masse? Is it just because it's proprietary and you guys aren't selling it off? Or is it more of it's a little more costly to run, so it's a scale issue more than it is like an individual dry cleaner really couldn't handle this?
Very good question. So the first decade of the business, it was founded in 2009, was really aimed at that. This notion of, hey, let's kill dry cleaning. Let's sell the equipment into industrial laundry, commercial laundry. They had middling success. Patagonia actually had a machine. A handful of different sort of industrial cleaners across the world bought the equipment. But, this is 2009, 2010. The dry cleaning industry is incredibly, especially at that time, antiquated. So they buy, they call them extractors, washing machines, and they beat them up, use the heck out of them for 20 years. And so there's sort of a cost perspective, and then the environmental thing, quite frankly, didn't matter. And so even though we're saying, hey, you're going to save water, every cycle you run in this machine, you're saving 300-400 gallons of water. It's the most energy efficient way to clean anything. You're using about 1/10 of the kilowatt hour, in terms of energy output relative to high efficiency washers and dryers. And you're recapturing microfibers, which otherwise get spit into the wastewater stream. So all those things seemed obvious, but they just didn't have a huge amount of adoption. And I think some of the things you said, they're pretty big. They're like 10 by 10 foot cubed. They're pretty expensive. They're not terribly hard to run, but you do need sort of storage of CO2. So you're talking pressure vessels and all that stuff. So coming out of that, we basically pivoted the business in 2018 as Patagonia was launching Warnwear. I was at REI at the time, leading their resale and circularity efforts. And both businesses were looking for an industrial scale cleaner who didn't use water, because we had tons and tons of used stuff. And, we came across Tersus, and sort of that propelled the business into this business to business model. We're like, hey, let's make the equipment for ourselves, service different industries, help these brands, stand up resale businesses. And, fast forward to today, I think we're, from a branded resale perspective, I don't think we are the leader sort of operationally.
So if you track kind of sustainability efforts, just broadly speaking, in the outdoor space, like particularly when it comes to apparel, right? You start getting in the 1993, like, you get recycled polyester for the first time. And, like that's where that kind of launches, and taking plastic bottles and putting them back into garments. And, then recycled fibers becomes kind of like the story for a long time. The idea around circularity, which is not a new concept. I think the circular economy is something that was coined maybe even in the 1960s or 70s. It's been a while, so people have been thinking about how to kind of keep things in circulation. But that becomes sort of more the focus. So sustainability becomes one of like those words that people don't really like, but we don't have a better option, so we use it anyway, right? And then so now we're at a point where, again, these re-commerce efforts by brands are coming up, and on face value makes a lot of sense. Like, hey, listen, we make a lot of stuff. Our stuff is really durable. How do we keep it in circulation longer? How do we keep things out of a landfill? Understanding that we're going to continue to manufacture things largely the same way. So where does a Tersus enter into sort of the sustainability or circularity like ecosystem? Like you mentioned your work, it's more of a B2B play. So how does that, from where you were 10 years ago to where you are today, like how do you, what are your efforts to support on the outdoor apparel side of things?
Yeah. And I agree. I mean, we can unpack sort of the claims around circularity and sustainability here in a bit.
Oh man, that's a whole other episode.
That's a whole nother, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, is circularity truly possible? I mean, we'll talk through that. I mean,
sure.
As I define it, I think of sort of three stops and let's just use like this vest's journey, right? So you have upstream, the point of manufacturing, and is the manufacturer, the brand, the retailer thinking about call it the tenets of circularity when they make that thing? So back to the 90s, recyclable materials, is it durable? And that's sort of just a key tenet. Like, how long can this thing last? And does it have multiple lifetimes in it? And then, when it's done, what do you do with it? And are you building in sort of, hey, is it repairable? Is it recyclable? Is it resellable? And I think a lot of that's reflected in, of course, the price point, and also the desirability of the product. And so I think there are brands doing, I'd say, better and better work there. But if you look at entire catalogs, nobody's checking all those boxes. No one's like, boom, boom, boom. Like, yeah, we've thought through all of this. We take full ownership of this item and know exactly what's going to happen to it after we sell it. Where we come in, and this is a second stage, is sort of a post-consumer phase where, hey, when you're done with this vest from Crescent Downworks or from North Face or Patagonia, what kind of choices do you have? And is the brand enabling that, or is our marketplace enabling that? And Tersus sits in, hey, we're going to help brands do this in a profitable and really seamless way and be the most efficient sort of one-stop shop for used products. So if you're in North Face and you're like, hey, you're done with that, whatever Nupsy jacket, you can bring it into our store, you can mail it in, and we've got a partner in Tersus who can inspect it, they'll repair it, they'll sanitize and clean it, and we're going to resell it, and we're going to recapture the value in that item. And so we're kind of sitting in this, again, the backbone space of, if you're making durable product and it's resellable and you're a brand and you want to build a resale channel, we are your partner. And we have the suite of services who can do that. The third stop is, this call end of life stream. And we dip our toe into that because we have a recycling business specifically for down. That's maybe one area where you could say, hey, Tersus is sort of solving circularity, where we can take a post-consumer down item, we can extract the down, not the face material. We don't quite know what to do with that yet. And put the down back in another garment. That's really cool. That's high value material. As you look at the broader landscape, though, it is super fragmented. There's mechanical recyclers, there's chemical recyclers, there's emerging companies like Reju and Circ on the chemical side. Lots of money going into that space. And then there's just outright liquidators, waste energy. That's a nice name for incineration. And a lot of brands still use that method. and the reality is on the sort of end of life side, a lot of brands also just skip the middle step, and they're like, hey, we've overproduced, we have too much stuff, send it to mechanical recycling or waste energy, and this stuff's new with tags on, like in the poly bag off the manufacturing floor. I mean, I'm not, don't want to share sort of specifics, but we see that to some degree as well, and you just go, holy cow, like, and I have to toe a line here, but there's some brands who are kind of working towards all three of those steps, and there's some who sort of talk about them and are not actually working towards them.
I mean, the disease of more is real, right? And I have a note for another topic about, like, I don't know how we really get to anywhere at a larger scale until things are legislated and people are told you just can't do that anymore. But then also, like, these stories are particularly demoralizing when you think about the growth of and not to take a shot, but I have in the past, of like a Sierra, where it's like, they're growing exponentially because they have so much stuff they can sell. And I know they're making their own and things as well. But the bottom line is they're still a closeout business for the most part.
Totally.
And then to think like, did you even try, or you couldn't even sell it to Sierra? So now you're just going to sell it and have it torn apart while it still is brand new with tags on. Like that's rough to hear.
It's so I mean, there's a lot of fragmentation. There's a lot of opportunity for, somebody to roll a lot of these players up into this whole sort of supply chain, call it, and think about, hey, the ownership and provenance and responsibility of a product. We're a long ways off from that. And I agree with you. I mean, I think as it relates to kind of the consumer space, I'm not a huge sort of legislation first person, but I am in this case. I agree. I think you're fighting human behavior, incentive systems that basically reward make more stuff based on last year's demand, change the color, and sell it once and never see it again, and comp better numbers. And I think that is inherently unsustainable. The resource extraction at a big scale is inherently challenging. And so this idea of, hey, you brand, and we've talked to, like, credit to some brands, North Face, Arc'teryx, who genuinely are like having these conversations and saying, hey, we make X amount of stuff a year. Let's say we're selling billions of units of products, or we've sold, 1 billion units over the last 10 years. They're in consumers' closets today. Half of them, or whatever the number is, are not even used. They're just collecting dust. That's a supply chain that exists for us today. How do we actually bring that back into the brand and not produce more and get more out of what's already made? And that's back to your question, that's what Tersus is trying to enable, not on that grand of a scale yet, but we're working down that path.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, my gut instinct on most things isn't immediate legislation. I just feel like this is, but I'm also, realistic about how people consume things. I mean, this is 99% of this, and I'm including the vast majority of the technical outdoor enthusiasts out there. These are passion purchases. These are I want this purchase, not I need this purchases. To say that you want to let consumer demand fix things, it's like, no, it's not going to happen. I mean, I do it. I'm more educated than most people on this stuff, and I see something, I'm like, oh, I'm totally going to buy that later. But then you also see when you have successes, and this is where creating the secondhand marketplace and kind of elevating secondhand as to be more, I think, present in front of consumers. That's where you can win over the consumers. I've talked about on the show before about being in a shop. And I want to ask you, how small can Tersus go, right? Because there's a independent specialty shop I saw in Montana earlier this past fall, and they've developed a really meaningful part of their business in the secondhand market. It's not just like a nice to have. We have some like used stuff that we sell too. It's like, no, it's like 20% of their business now. And I think there you go. There's where like commerce and, and capitalism can actually help solve some problems as well. And when you think of it like an independent specialty, is that a market that could be served by Tersus, or is it just simply like too small of you need that doesn't really work with how things actually work, how these things get cleaned and the processing that you guys do?
No, not at all. I mean, in fact, and although, we're largely B2B with brands, we have worked with, local independent retailers and secondhand stores to clean and repair for them.
Awesome.
And I think we actually like, in many cases, smaller, mid-sized players because there's a lot of autonomy. There's sort of more agile decision making. They're very collaborative,
Yeah.
and I mean, we work with everything from betting companies to brands. I think if you were to ask my team, they'd say we like the small brands because we know the owners, we know
Always.
the decision makers. Yeah.
And they're usually
So
founder led and they're passionate, right?
Totally. And then you move a notch up to like the Steos and the Filsons, and they're also incredible to work
Yeah.
with. And I think they have their own challenges. They're always balancing the sort of viability and fiscal, like, so I'll call it sustainability on that side with trying to do
which
the
is
right
important.
thing. It is important, but I think your question's spot on. I mean, we think, and we've been really intentional about this. We don't want to be just an enterprise service provider. We've always said, hey, if you come, solutions is a very intentional part of our name. Like, we're going to work with you. We still have people call who are like, hey, I've got like this 1970s down. We just repaired a 30-year-old sleeping bag for somebody who, and I don't want to get into the B2C business at scale, but if they call, if you're like Colin, you're like, hey, will you guys CO2 this? Absolutely. Like, we want to kind of keep this stuff in use. Again, that's sort of a fundamental purpose for us.
So when you look at then kind of the two main players I mentioned earlier in the show, like the Out and Backs and the Gear Trades, which are, I think, probably, the two most prominent, secondhand, outdoor secondhand retailers that are really making some noise about, driving more awareness and business to secondhand. How do you interact with guys like that? Is that something where they so much stuff comes in such quantities that you're just helping the process? Is there something you mentioned? Your solutions is in your title of the company. So are there other ways that you're participating sort of in the secondhand space as it pertains to the outdoor apparel market?
Yeah, no, so their models are, on one hand, sort of fundamentally at odds with what we're trying to do with brands, which is, if you were to take a very strict view of our services, we're enabling brands to own their resale channel. And the thesis being, hey, brand, you made that product. You have a right to resell it. You should go recapture the value in that item that already exists, retain that customer, acquire that new customer, and build an experience that's in line with your brand and is additive and authentic. I always, I kind of equate back to your Sierra comment, and assuming everything's used, this is kind of an authentic off-price channel. Like, this thing's actually been used, it's been refurbished, and you get it for 50% off. And by the way, instead of, it's hard to say it's a 1-for-1 offset to a new item, but the math is roughly, call it 50 to 80% offset of manufacturing a new item in terms of, the life cycle assessment. So all those things are like, hey, this is brand why you should do this. Like, this is credibility, trust building. The marketplace is so Out and Back and Gear Trade are basically saying, hey, we're building a marketplace effect where we want as much supply as we possibly can get from consumers, brands, doesn't really matter. And as a result, we can kind of drive more eyeballs to our marketplace. I think many brands are sort of cautious around what that means for their brand, and they can't really control the pricing or the experience, but it's powerful. And you've talked to these guys and they have real traction. They have significant audience. They're building credibility in the space. I think it's an amazing on-ramp for customers who don't want to buy, the new DPS skis for $1,200. And there's a real sort of authentic value proposition. So that's just a sort of lay of the landscape. As we work, in the past, we've actually done cleaning and repair work for Out and Back. They have opted to bring some of that in-house as they scaled, and rightfully so, given their cost structure. And then on the other side, Gear Trade, roughly, in aggregate, and this is sort of a misunderstanding of branded resale, we sell through about 80 to 85% of all the products that we process for our brands. That's on average. And so, let's say we get 1,000 items, we'll sell through 800 to 850 in a year. So we don't have a lot left over after sort of full selling cycle. But that stuff, instead of saying, hey, let's liquidate it or donate it or recycle it, let's get in on a marketplace. And that's where sort of collaboration with Aaron at Gear Trade, has been really valuable. And for brands like Stio, where Stio wants to own and sell the best of the best, they say, hey, take the 15, 20% and let's just put it right on Gear Trade. We're going to get more eyeballs. And it's so that type of collaboration, I think, is going to emerge and grow here, where they're solving a problem on sort of scale and traffic and matching the right consumer with that item, while we're kind of saying, hey, brand, we're creating a really great experience via other software integrations with, companies like Trove and Archive. So there's like a frenemy element here, I guess, going on.
I mean, I think that makes the most sense. I mean, I do question, and I have questioned some of the re-commerce efforts that have been put out there, because it feels very box checky at times. It also, when you look, even the ones who have partnered, a handful of them that partner with folks like, like a Gear Trade, or maybe even with yourself, it doesn't get promoted on the front of their website. It's clearly a secondary effort at best. And I understand the inclination towards, I want to control everything that has to do with my brand. But if you're not promoting it and you really are much more invested in creating first quality product, and it's a secondary site altogether, why not just outsource that and know that it's getting done well, better than you probably ever could have? You're probably going to get some money from it, maybe not as much as you thought, but now it's being handled and it's something more you can point to and say, hey, look what we're doing. We're doing this partnership with these people who really know what they're doing, versus let's just try and hold on to it and make it our thing. And then now we got to hire like 6 people to process stuff. And they probably end up working with someone like yourself anyway. It just seems like so much more simpler that way.
Yeah. And that is, I think, a serious frustration I'd say there's sort of those who are doing it well camp and those who are trying to figure it out. You look at an Arc'teryx, front, homepage, like Rebird is Universal Nav, and they have a VP of e-commerce. And, we do all their logistics and cleaning and repairs in the US, and they can't, they're supply constrained. So where, Aaron's like, hey, I want your supply. I'm actually like, I sell through, or we do with Arc'teryx, 98% of Arc'teryx supply in a month. So if I get 10,000 units, those things are flying off the shelf, because and they're unique, right? They're maybe a handful of brands like that, and they promote it. If you follow Regear, you're going to get retargeted on Instagram. You're going to get the weekly email. So that model is a far end of the spectrum. There are the others where you go, holy cow, like, yeah, you wanted to do this. Everybody was excited. 3 people have turned over, and it's totally homeless. And nobody's talking about it. And you've checked the box, and like, you're not taking this seriously. And so, and I think that's also, honestly, there's sort of a generational, and back to this incentive systems of how, the whole kind of retail ecosystem works. A lot of these leaders are still just incentivized to sell more stuff.
Oh yeah.
And so the CEO is never going to be like, yeah, that thing, like go make that 10x bigger. And when I was at REI, I was leading the resale business, and that's a real, including their garage sale business, right? And you're probably familiar with that. They're in store, so I oversaw that, and then what they call now resupply. We're well on our way to a 9-figure business. So it's not, it's certainly, it's their $4 billion brand. It's still sort of a drop in the bucket, but
sure,
there are those examples where you're going, okay, this is actually becoming significant. And, from a brand perspective, it's an amazing customer acquisition tool. Back to this, hey, on-ramp, outdoors is for all. And we saw that. I mean, at REI, and we see that today. It was like, 1 in 5 of our consumers through used gear was millennial or Gen Z. I think it was, or sorry, 1 in 5 in our core membership was millennial and Gen Z. 50% of the used buyer was millennial or Gen Z.
Right.
more diverse, more females, more like, and so you're like, okay, this is actually what we all say we want to do. It's happening here. And so let's go talk to that future generation who actually cares about this stuff and impact and how they consume. Yeah.
No, it's amazing. It's another extension of we have the two of us, the old white guy, problem, skinny white guy on top of the mountain problem. It's an extension of that, because now we're the skinny outdoorsy white guys who are running the companies who are just are Gen X or older and don't recognize that. I mean, obvious things like we had Andrew, who founded Libsyn Designs, on the show a couple of months ago. And he's talking about how, his head of product and head of sustainability are the same person. And I'm like, that's freaking genius. How come nobody, that should be everywhere, right?
Smart.
Because I've definitely been places where, here comes the sustainability person and the head of product is like hiding because they don't want to be told no, right? There's just, there's all these like dynamics. It's like, no, make them the same position, like that makes a ton of sense.
100%.
So I'm not saying that would work everywhere, but like that just was something like nobody would have thought of 10 years ago. Right. And 100%. It's a younger company being much more nimble. Like that makes a lot of sense to do. And I think that's exactly your point is well founded of the younger generation are going to be the ones who come through to make this the norm and grow this category without a doubt.
Without a doubt. And I mean, I will say, and we've made, so we've launched a bunch of footwear brands in the last year, New Balance, Doc Martens, Carhu, who's kind of emerged. They used to be a ski brand. And I honestly was like, can we pull off footwear and see meaningful sell through? And they are absolutely crushing it. Like sell through rates above that 80% that I quoted. And, some of it I think is that Tersus, and they do a fairly good job of saying, hey, this is like a certified pre-owned shoe. Like it's been sanitized. You can feel really good about it. But that
like a pair of like bowling rental shoes or something.
Yeah. You're like, ooh, get the spray out. But so that's another where you go, okay, like the consumer's out there, and it's they are looking for this. It's never been a demand constrained business. It's actually more supply constrained. We're always sort of saying, how do you drive more trade in? How do you tap into your customers' closets? And it's disproportionately that younger customer. And they're demanding it. They're like, this is how I want to shop. I'm on Poshmark. I'm looking at all like I do peer-to-peer and I want to buy used from the brand.
So kind of last thing on the branded side of it, it is sort of like the move du jour right now. Like we need to have a re-commerce piece of it. We got to have it. Everybody else does. And, with certain levels of success, it does feel like very box checky in some instances, like I mentioned. When you sort of look at it though, is it a good business decision? Can it be a profitable thing for someone either to manage on their own, or should they only partner with someone like yourself? Like, as you look at it as a whole, the re-commerce business as a whole, is that going to be a profitable arm of, outdoor apparel brands in the future?
The short answer, which I think it gets sort of also misconception out there is a misconception is that it is profitable. I think one of the things we've done really well amongst a few is we are a profit center for every brand we work with. And so we say, if you have used stuff, and it could be like the dark, nasty stuff that's been returned in your DC, you don't know what to do with. And by the way, every brand has that. They're like, oh yeah, like we have 40 pallets. Side note, we actually on North Face, we're going through this exercise. They found 2 pallets of their early 90s Summit series product. It was like the bright neon colors. Yeah. And so it's shipped to us and we were like, this is a gold mine of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like neon yellow.
Who's got the eBay account,
Yeah. And so it was such a rare find. It's in their
Did they know they sent it to you? Don't they have a historian that's like pissed off right now?
No, it's like literally often that, the ops guy's like, oh, this is like far in the deep corner, get that out. And so when we cracked it open, we're like, you guys have to come see this. It's in their library of like historical pieces now, which is kind of amazing. Cool. That's an aside. Yeah. But so whether it's from a return stream or a trade-in stream, those are the two primary sources of product. We ensure that, hey, and we've put guardrails in place with our software providers like Archive, who are saying, hey, optimize every touch of this item. So for a North Face, publicly owned VF Corp, they came to us and were like, listen, this has to be margin accretive or in line with our mainline margin, or it doesn't work because we have to report. And so 3 years in now, we're at, and I can't share the exact number, but it's a healthy net margin business. And you go down the list, every brand is saying, yep, like we're making money on this, or we're recouping profit depending on how they account for it. And so I think that's a very, very important note, is there is a model out there. It works. And you as a brand, this is, sure, it's not $1 billion business, but our biggest brands are doing 9-figure resale businesses and at a healthy kind of 15-20% net income. And some of the accounting, because I'm sure it'll get scrutinized, some of the returns are written off. And so reselling it is just sort of like a profit recapture mechanism. Whereas, and not to knock Out and Back, but they're buying inventory. We don't own inventory. Right. And one of the mandates I've kind of pushed in the team is like, I don't want to be the bank. I don't want to be a Sierra Trading Post and kind of take that risk. I think the brand, they've made the product, should hold that balance sheet risk.
Yeah, you guys could have solved this by ordering less from the factory,
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, why do I have to carry your inventory for you?
Yeah. Well, it's like, this goes back to the, like, let's think about what you're making and how much you're making.
Right.
So yeah, that all to say, we try to be a very efficient first and last touch on that item before it gets to the customer. Like, boom, we know the margin on this, feel good, let's rock and roll.
I guess the amount that we're making is a good segue into the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, because, I think when it comes to these kinds of things, consumers, we all just want the silver bullet, right? And the one example I always give is like organic foods, of like, oh, there's a label on this apple, there's not one on this apple. Who cares if 90% people are wrong and think that the organic one is healthier when it's not? Bottom line is, it's better for the world if you buy the organic one. Sure, I'll pay the extra 30 cents to buy the organic one. Boy, my conscience is put at ease, because at Ralph's today, I got 6 organic apples. And I think people want that for apparel, right? They want to know that. That's why the hang tags and everything, I feel like, are mostly greenwashing. It's like, hey, there's a recycled fiber in this. You're solving the problems of the world. It's like, no, they still polluted a river making it. Doesn't matter what's in it, kind of thing, right? So so I think when we look back on this time, if we're able to kind of have a positive outcome to kind of the climate situation and the making things situation we find ourselves in, I'm sure it'll be a mix of solutions that kind of lead to, a better way that we make stuff. But that being said, in addition to what you guys do, there are lots of other folks out there now who are trying different things. And I wanted to kind of ask you specifically about, you mentioned Reju earlier, right? Which their goal seems to be to take existing polyester and to be able to, I believe, recycle it or upcycle. I'm not sure what the phrasing they're using is, but to kind of make it back into yarn to make more recycled polyester things, kind of creating a closed loop stream of being able to take polyester and continue to make things out of it. What are your thoughts when you see things like that? Did I get that wrong? Sorry, I saw you.
No. Yeah, you got it. You nailed it. Yeah.
Okay. So, like, when you see that, like a solution like that, are you optimistic? Are you like, okay, well, like, fingers crossed? I mean, like, what I'm just curious your point of view on stuff like that. And we are working to have Patrick Frisk on the show at some time in the future to talk about that specifically. Cool. But I'm curious of what you think of those efforts.
Yeah, I mean, I have 2 frames of mind on it. On one, taking it at surface level, I'm kind of like, that's a cold fusion-esque problem, right? Like that scale of like textile to textile, and you're going to have viable market and buyers for the like finished product. I'm like, just go sell cold fusion. Like, it's like that big, right? I mean, we're making more and more stuff. We use less and less stuff. The maturity of the markets and the buyers to kind of like get there is a long ways off. And there's unfortunately there's some history, and this is in the chemical recycling space, the textile to textile, of companies that haven't made it. And they're certainly pioneers. On the other hand, I go, sure, it might be cold, but it needs to happen, because
Right.
We're simply making too much stuff. We use it less. To your point earlier, we're not going to stop consuming. Like that's just like, we're like cave people, right? Like it's just wired into us. And like Amazon, I worked at Amazon before REI. Like that, I left Amazon because it's like, holy cow. Like I'm just filling like, landfills. Basically, it was like my job. And so I love that, it seems like an incredibly talented team. There's a ton of venture money going into the Reju's of the world. Circ is a polycotton chemical recycler. There's Evernew. Okay. There's a litany of them. We've worked, and we haven't worked directly with Reju. We've worked with others in terms of trying to, like I said, 15-ish% of what we handle may go to a next best use path. They're all a long way away in my view. And I don't know kind of like the roadmap or anything related to Reju from true sort of industrial scale. And I think they're facing a couple of challenges. One is they need a significant amount of feedstock that is somewhat homogeneous. And then on the other side, they need a significant offtake agreement for the finished yarns. And can they get a price that's comparable to the virgin material? And right now the answer is, I think, no. But more and more brands are stepping up to kind of dip a toe into that space.
Yeah, maybe Sierra could donate a store or two. Like you can have all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I know. I mean, and you're seeing, we just actually talked to Goodwill yesterday, their national office, and you look at that network, how much stuff they get, and a lot of it's textiles. Yeah. They want to be a provider and sorter into this. I just visited a waste management facility last week where they have this automated sorting technology that uses infrared, sort of near-end infrared tech to detect what is in the makeup of that textile. So there's like, oh, this is 100% poly, or this is 80% poly. And then it sorts by that. So as that technology emerges, I think the Rejus become more viable, but there's so much. I think you mentioned this. It's still so fragmented. Like, how do you piece all this together when the fundamental source is going to be your closet, right? Like in my closet, right. 360 million closets. And how do you kind of path all that stuff the right way?
And it's more complicated than the outdoors. We have an environmental journalist, a fashion journalist who joins us every once in a while on the show. And she and I talk a lot about, because she covers mostly, the Sheins and the Temus of the world. Yeah. And sometimes I'll be, complaining about something that I complain about on the show. And she's like, you guys really don't have it that bad in the outdoor space compared to a lot of these fashion brands who are truly 100%. like nefariously fucking things up, they're really it's just a profit centers that they do not care about anything else. At least in the outdoors, you have to present like you care, even if maybe you don't, but most people generally do. And I think I think it's a great answer of we have to keep pushing the boundaries on this stuff as well, right? It's a scale is always a problem, right? I remember when I learned that at Timberland, at Polar Tech, when we were, we kind of learned that even on a pretty small scale, you can there's incredible things you can make. I mean, there was a couple of years there where we felt like spider silk was going to be the next thing, and lots. That. I'm sure you sat in that chair like spider silk, man. We got to, but nobody could ever. They could maybe make a little swatch of fabric. And it's also like, where are you going to get all the raw materials, and how are you going to then again make it at a scale that it is profitable? It's like, great, it's $100 for a tiny little piece of fabric. That's not going to work. So I think it's going to be the same thing, but unless people are pushing forward and trying, we don't get anywhere.
I am most, this is just my personal view, definitely skeptical of kind of these efforts right now. I think the next decade there will be winners. And I like your comment. I mean, listen, the outdoor, and I love what you're doing. I love the podcast. I think
thanks, man.
The industry needs a little irreverence, a little self-reflection. You're filling a massive gap there. But the industry does a lot of good things. And like, if really you kind of take an aggregate, our partner base, and we work with luxury, fashion, footwear, outdoor sports, outdoor is far and away, off the front here. And, there's a lot of good things happening. And I think a lot of honesty, like emerging, I think of people like Annie at Cotopaxi, Lead Sustainability, like, super honest. Like you're not going to have a better conversation than kind of what they're doing well and what they're not. And she's taken it to the board. So it's cool to see that. And I'm glad, like you're out here kind of telling these stories.
Right on, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Let's definitely have you on again, especially we have some more of these stories. I'm sure will come up and lots of other things to discuss. Maybe you can be our head bullshit detector on environmental efforts in the outdoor apparel space.
Yeah, I'll I have plenty of stories to tell, not publicly yet.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Colin.
All right, that's the show for today. Send your feedback on this and every episode of The Rock Fight to myrockfight@gmail.com. The Rock Fight is a production of Rockfight LLC. I'm Colin True. Thank you for listening. And here to take us out is one of the lead singers of Less Than Jake. It's Krista Makes, who composed the Rock Fight Fight song. And lucky for you, he's going to play the Rock Fight Fight song right now. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters. Rock Fight!